Back when I was a little kid, it was popular for certain people to visit Elko, like uh, birds of prey conservation groups. So there was some particular people that were extra obsessed with that. That was their life, right? And they had an RV with a back area for their birds of prey. Um, and like they would have them hover on the back of their RV, and I got comfortable with the birds and had an affinity. So I was able to feel as they're hovering in the um, stiff wind in the evenings there in Elko area that would often occur. I was always obsessed with kites, and like I've said recently before, I flew a kite all the way up into space in 1998, and it was very kind of freaky. So, as I was feeling the shoulder joints and how they hunch and splay and maneuver at different angles with the cartilage and the fold points, I was immediately fascinated as a uh, 6 to 7 year old. I don't know exactly what age I was. I think I just turned 7, maybe. Well, what's interesting about that is that's when you join Cub Scouts, right? And they had a joint Cub Scout Boy Scout like balsa wood whittling contest for one point in the year. You make a race car with wheels out of wood, and another point you would make like a jet Airbus thing that would go along a wire stretched in the Mormon church, which was actually just the activity center for the mixed Native American culture people of the area. And then the LDS religion wanted to, claim ownership over the concept of these places that would exist anyways, and they wanted to host them. And so you had to have certain behavioral standards because it was so religious, right? Um, and this was all before the Salt Lake head honchos ever wanted it to be that way, but out across Deseret communities that were thought of themselves as God believing, that they had these community centers because they all were Jack Mormons. So they'd get into arguments about various subjects, but that's not the point of what I'm here about. Um, so they had these when I was a Cub Scout, when I was 7. Let's see, your Cub Scout and your Bear Scout, and then they call you Weebelo instead of like whatever. I didn't make any sense. Like instead of Wolf Scout. I don't know why when you're 9 you're called a Weebelo. Sounds retarded. You weebs. So, anyways, um, I had this whole design that immediately came to mind from the Hawk Wings, where on this version for flying trains, Airbuses, they would be, on bowling ball type sized or whatever sockets along electrified like rail wires that would be like, rounded rails to keep it inside of there while having um so like this side would be the side on the outside that would be the rounded shape, and then on the inside you just have, wires so that it can flex and have space, the wing, and you got fold joint points here. And the point of this is they flex right, like I was saying, with um, tethers in on either side and within the wings on it through, with like pistons, more than was done in old Airbus airplanes that I had to fly on that were falling apart, and I had to felt like I was, holding them together with my magnetism as the whole plane shook to pieces. And other planes were blowing up on the railway or on the runways around me when I went on flights. They kept using the old Airbuses that were supposed to be retired in the late 90s. And so many people died that they didn't report, just blown up by failing airlines. A good thing that's all past us. The point is, these wing points fold, and the end goal of this design, um, eventually would be you would take it freely, like it'd be like a family rocket shuttle, eventually, and then um, you take it down and it would lock into the railroad rails, and you'd be one among many, as I called them, pop can vans, as my original design. And I had a big, like, cog gear system that flexes and locks like a tape deck into these purple, like, imagine we're looking down, of course, from above on this shuttle, but the purple lines are the rail lines. So um the flex points work as such. So if you're flying freely, not on the rail system, then these would fold up, like they have them at almost 90-degree angles, and they move in and out however much to help angle the aircraft as it's flying and maneuvering. Um, Now, if you imagine the air is whooshing in, well, it hits these points, these joint points, um, for these front fin wings. And if you take how the joints work on a hawk, and how my joints work, because I wanted to be as fully functional, um, going into the future as possible. Well, if you look at, we're gonna look this up.
This last one's very advanced. I'm just gonna show it to you first, and then we'll see what happens. Okay. Oh.
Okay, so Sol Ruka, um, and another name, Kendall Gray. These are their names, their stage names in WWE Ultimate Wrestling, right? So their parents showed up in Elko and said, "Hey, Ammon, we know who you are. We know how your body's flexible and is growing, like time loop, weird, weird stuff. Everybody knew who I was." And everything that I was doing now back to then randomly. So, that was a little weird and confusing, but I went with it. So, you had these children that were, my age or younger or older a little bit, and I had to show them how to exercise and flex their mind down their spine and hold certain tendons certain ways because your body wants to twist, with the spin of the earth being wrong, as I've described many times. So, in order to keep yourself free at all of the important, like, shoulder joint points and everything to stay youthful and gymnastic, um, you had to do really intense, specific workouts that build, like, not core strength, but the flexion points between core strength and everything else. That's all that matters. That's something that Asians know. You need to be able to expand with, um, charge into being a larger person during exercise. Your mass bloats up and becomes more, dynamically fluid and allows for, as long as you stay, everybody knows this. There's different mixtures of genetics, etc., etc. So, what I wanted here was a system where, at various speeds and maneuverings, these would be in different R wing positions. Now, a bunch of smarties back in Elko in the early 2000s, they tried to beat out my design and they ended up just modifying it. So, the concept here is, if you know anything about shoulders, then there's the bigger shoulder blades, and then you have the smaller shoulder flexion points. So the concept of like a hinge here and then a wider triangle. If you see somebody tensing and squeezing their back that's well developed, then you know that there's all these intricate smaller side tendons that pull. So to simulate that, air's rushing in here. You can even create fluted, like, my mind, vents that can come through, and these are like, um layers, like these slats. And so when you put air pressure at speed through them, then it creates torque lift on the layers. And then you have magnetism that you can increase or decrease to, um, squeeze that air that's coming through for various effects. Um, as well as this concept that while you're flying, not on wires, um, because on wires, right, you take a corner and these joint points need to be able to flex within their triangles. These need to be able to swing out up this way and all the way back to the locked position like this. Because, during storage and use as a bus, van, these wings will fold to their triangle points, and then these triangles would slide down to the tip point here while the wings fold, um, frontwards so that they're out of the way, like a the how similar to how certain insects function when they're settling the sheath layers of their wings under their, um like, carapace beetle shells. So, um as for the rear flight wing glider, um the concept is you have your height differential management on, like, a separate magnetic guide rail on the back, so that your rear red, air splitter point on top is has, like, a range for the wings. So when the wings on the front here, when they go to, fold inwards, what they actually do, you see how they're pretty far rearwards. A regular airplane, right, would have a wing like a little farther down and underneath or on the side and stick out. But instead, that this doesn't have that. So how this functions, you might ask. I have all these. I'm sure you have how I. Blah, 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 blah. I have all these skeptical aeronautical engineers right now. Like, God, that doesn't make sense. Well, as you pick up speed, these wings slide along their rails and from like you have several options because they're so big and clunky. Um, you can have, let me design it out here. You can create a like additional fold point where the wings as they slide like um again certain other insects that have more of an elongated body type wing. Whew, this is intricate. Then this piece, right, would go from being flat to hinging up on this red piece, this the center divider, windbreak, and like adjust up to the peak height point of this overhead rudder so that you have all this range of air that's whooshing in up here and then it can come in and get trapped and sent through um for lift and change of angle direction. Now this isn't all that different from how they had their wing flaps and internal wing joint like stuff in the recent history of aircraft. Um, so what I was gonna point out is you potentially have a system where, of course, it's computer assisted, but thinking back to this being more primitive, as you pick up speed, this would furl out and lock into full extension glider position, basically, when you're free flying, not on rails. Um, so that, like, as you pick up speed, is the concept, then, like, magnetic resistance is overcome that you control, and then the wings go from being like, you know, folded in like that to unfurling and folding out, you know, like that. So, to be clear, to reiterate here, you could potentially have these front wings um within their triangle here. You can have them flex all the way up so that instead of being forward, they're like up above the aircraft, sticking upwards. One more than the other for extreme maneuvering. Well, let's see here. The slabs of shoulder blade here that would have air coasting underneath them and flutter floating with magnetics between them and the surface of the airplane above and below, because it's like within a zone inside of here underneath the skin, right? Just like a hawk or a person somewhat. So what I was gonna say is you have battery juice inside of these directly, and then um it's cooled by the wind rushing through. So it's like dual use purpose, and you don't have overheating batteries. Yeah, there you go. Well, there's my design. I think I've covered quite a bit of it here. I never get any comments too useful lately for decades, but I hope whoever's hearing this enjoyed watching. See you next time, I guess.